Well, we mentioned yesterday late in the program. By the way, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Ring that bell on Facebook. Do whatever you got to do. Be a part of the show. We mentioned yesterday on Facebook that Clay Helton, well, we didn't mention on Facebook. We mentioned on the show that Clay Helton, head coach out at Southern Cal, or now former head coach at Southern Cal, was relieved of his duties after just 2 ball games. I don't want to say this is a shocking move because there have been questions about Clay Helton for a while. And for whatever reason, and maybe culture, certainly the players seem to be invested in their head coach, but the performance that they had this past weekend against Stanford was not indicative of that. And look, I get it. They were a top 15 team. They were embarrassed. They looked, I had that game on, and they looked disinterested at times in being there. And I think that's one of the things that really can crush you as a coach, is when it feels like your team isn't interested in having, and playing their best and giving their best effort. I mean, because the fans read that and they're like, "Oh, what's going on here? Is there something wrong in the locker room?" Now, I would say that if Clay Helton were this close to being fired, like it's so weird that you're 1-1. You got 10 games left in the regular season. If it was that bad previously, why'd you keep him anyway? Like, that's one question I think you have to ask. Helton's under contract through 2023. His buyout is in the $12 million range. I mean, would you have fired him after week 1? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question that I feel like fans at Southern Cal have to ask themselves. Now, again, they played San Jose State in the opener, and they beat them 30-7. So it's not like that was a close ball game. But I think the legitimate question is, okay, well, if you open with Stanford and you got beat the way they did in week 1, are you firing a coach week 1 for a loss? And if you are, why didn't you just get rid of him at the end of the season a year ago? Like, that to me is the biggest question of all. And honest to goodness, looking at their schedule, they got Notre Dame, who's a top 12 team, UCLA, who's zipped up into the top 13. You've got Arizona State, a top 20 team. You got BYU, a top 25 team. I mean, they got 4 ranked opponents left. I mean, we were just talking about schedules a few minutes ago, and you can only play who's available. You got 4 current top 25 programs on your schedule. And yeah, 3 of the 4 are in the final 4 weeks of the season. But if you go through this schedule the rest of the way, and maybe they won't, maybe they'll falter, maybe they'll lose this weekend against Washington State. But I don't see why you would feel the need to press the panic button today after your team. Now, again, it was a small slate last year, but they went 6-1, right? 6-1, losing their final game of the season to Oregon. I mean, how is that a reasonable decision to make at this point, given the remaining schedule that was lying ahead of you? Look, Clemson fired Tommy Bowden in 2008. They were 3-3. Middle of the year. you'd given some time to that season, and you started to look forward to the future, say, look, it's not going to work out. You bring Dabo Swinney in. And again, who knew that this is what Clemson would become under Dabo Swinney? Very few of you would have bought into that theory. But just the second game of the season, I mean, that would have essentially been Clemson in 2008 firing Tommy Bowden after they lost to Alabama in the opener. Now, some of you will probably say, well, they should have, Swanee. They waited 5 too many weeks. Maybe Dabo Swinney could have done more with that team. But then that again puts me right back into the question of why were you keeping him around anyway? If that was the move you were going to make after a singular ball game that season for Clemson. So why would this be the move you would make? Now, interestingly, Tony Elliott, Clemson offensive coordinator. Some of you have been saying, hey, Tony, go back to Michelin. Well, you know, I'm pretty sure that Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G., once said, I'm going back to Cali. Tony Elliott's got ties to the state of California. Of course, the great story that ESPN Game Day told about Tony's mother tragically being killed in a car accident, and then coming to South Carolina, he ends up at Dabo Swinney's house, and I can't remember the name of the street. Let me see if I can throw this in my Google machine real quick and get it for you. And the thing about it was that the street that Dabo Swinney lived on had a eerily similar name. And I remember Dabo saying to him in that clip, saying that how cool was it, or maybe that's not the right word, but how unique was it that Tony was being hired and promoted on the same street where, with the same name as the street that his mother passed away on. I was trying to find it. I'll look it up during the break. I couldn't dig in on it quick enough here. Stay with us.
That can hurt any part of your body, like your joints, heart, kidneys, your immune